So it's the second day of our meeting. We always take some time out to look at our strategic plan, to give you all an update on what we've achieved this year and also to get your input. So that's what we'll be doing when everybody's settled. Okay, so one of the outcomes of our group discussion last year was to focus on research and to focus on research information and how members actually fund research in their various organisations, whether they do fund research at all. So our friend Rob Goldstein undertook to survey members and have a look and get some information that we can share with you all. So I'd like to first off invite Rob to come up and give an update of the outcomes of that research. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. And I know a bunch of other people are going to walk in, so we'll welcome them when they walk into the room this morning. So this is, you're going to see some data from a survey we did over the last probably 5 weeks. I'll just note that a lot of the work you're going to see was actually compiled by another person on my staff. That's a typical theme now. The data I showed you yesterday was from Dr. Vieira. This data was compiled by a young woman, Emer Martin, who is in the States, right here from Ireland, actually. So we sent out this survey, like I said, about 5 weeks ago, and this came out of, Carol mentioned, our strategic conversation last year. We didn't dive too much into this survey on the information sharing, which is really the goal of that strategic plan, and I hope to bring this forward and get some of that data in the next round. But really the goal of this survey was to try to determine which of our members fund research. We know that all of us in our organizations can't do everything, but we wanted to get a sense of which members funded research. In some 30,000-foot top-line view, try to get a sense of what type of research our members funded, whether that be what we call basic research, which is more the lab-based research, versus clinical research. And you'll see those words come up on the next 3 slides. So we tried to ask people to separate the two out. Sometimes, as we know, when you fund research, things seem to kind of be in a gray area as you transfer something from the lab into the clinic. So some of these numbers that members gave us are their best guesstimate of that. And again, as we go forward with this type of investigation, we'll try to hone in on that. We also then tried to look at kind of the general proportion of things, 50% this, 60% that, et cetera, trying to not just look at the dollar amount, but also look at kind of the percentage of overall spending. We also looked at some trends in collaboration. And when we make a couple of comments on this at the end, it actually came as no surprise to me, the types of collaborations that are going on. This is an incredibly collaborative community, and that really kind of came out in the survey results that were provided. Finally, we looked at what I call the manner of making research decisions. And this, again, wasn't all that surprising to me, but I think knowing how we make decisions around research is helpful as a community to try to figure out how we're going forward. This survey, like I said, was sent out about 5 weeks ago through a system called SurveyMonkey. It was freely available. Rachel and the team at the Alliance sent it out via email. Then we followed up at the Institute, or Emer did, individually with each of the members on the list. There were 42 different member organizations that received those follow-up emails. Most of them, 39 of the 42, provided some type of information, and before today is over, I will get with the other 3 members and get their data into this. But I felt at least this was complete enough to show you some preliminary results. So thank you all for your responses. I know that for many folks, English isn't the primary language, and I know that some things in the survey were lost in translation, for lack of a better way to put it. So if you want to talk afterwards about maybe how you think you responded to an answer, maybe not accurately, we can update the information before we try to call this kind of final and go forward. So I have very simple data this time, pie graph. So did your organization fund ALS research in the last fiscal year close? So what we asked people here was not in the current year. It's hard to kind of say, what are you doing right now? So I asked people in the survey to try to focus on their last fiscal year close. So out of the 42 responders, 31% said that they do fund ALS research. 8 said they did not. And like I said, there are still those 3 that we didn't hear from. So this is really incredible. You know, it actually turns out that the vast majority of the membership of the Alliance fund some type of ALS research. The grand total, there you can see, and this is in US dollars. We did our best to try to convert, as people noted in their survey responses, if it was in shekels or something else, tried to convert it the best we could to US dollars at the time. So 64,570,400 US dollars were reported to be spent by member organizations on ALS research in their last fiscal year. This is an incredible number, $64 million. $64 million spent on ALS research. And many of us raise those dollars through very typical nonprofit ways, whether it be a Facebook fundraiser in honor of somebody's birthday, a walk, a run, a ride, et cetera. So this philanthropic investment by our patients in the community is immense, and it's something I think we should all be very grateful for. And again, I do think that this number will grow a little bit as we refine this data and speaking with some folks and getting those last few responses. And this is broken down by region, and the regions here were assigned based on the current Alliance way that it defines regions on its website. And Rachel, I know that we're updating that as best we can, but this is how I broke it down that way. And I put it in this list, the top number spent in overall, and then down from there. So again, when we look at this data, is it all that surprising? I don't know, I actually thought it was kind of surprising. There is a tremendous amount of research spent in lots of our different regions. It isn't all just in North America or just in Europe. It really is across the globe. As we look in trends in basic and clinical, and I'm sure that we'll make these slides available afterwards so people can dig into it, so don't feel like you gotta take a photo. This is some interesting information to have. We'll look at it broken down in statistics in a second. One of the columns I think is really interesting here is if you look at the organizations number in the farthest column over, and you look at that number, you start to actually see that in some cases, there's only a couple of organizations that are investing, for example, in Australia and Oceania. 2 organizations reported there almost $6 million US dollars of spend. That's a huge amount of money for 2 organizations to be carrying the weight of. It's a great example sometimes of, in some of our regions, a couple of organizations take huge leadership in that. So this is the percentage to make it much more simple for folks. About 2/3 of the funds that were reported to be spent were spent on basic research, and about a little bit more than 1/3 was spent on clinical. And again, the dollar amounts are below, about 41 million on basic and 24 million on clinical. This is the most simplest way to look at that information. And again, we can talk about whether or not this is surprising to us later on, I'm sure. When we look at the question of how folks made ALS research decisions, and I know in the survey this was, I gave you 3 choices, and sometimes your organization didn't fit exactly in one of those choices. So to make this really simple for today's discussion, I then took your responses and tried to plug them into spots instead of trying to leave kind of other in and of itself. So this may not accurately reflect what everybody said, but I kind of forced it into one of those 3 spots. Primarily, those were internal decision makings. For example, my organization, we have a chief scientific officer who truly does make the final call on how ALS research dollars are spent. Many other organizations have that. 9 work that way, where it's totally internal. 14, the largest percentage of folks, use a peer review grant process. To just say a comment on this, this is typically when you get a core group of folks in the ALS research community together. These could be physicians seeing patients or basic researchers, usually some collaboration between the 2, as well as an internal decision maker together, and they review what's going on in the country and try to determine which type of grants, quote unquote, to fund. Some of those are very long processes. Some of you reported that you use that system, but it's not as onerous as others may think. And then as you'll see, there's 8 folks that responded no answer to this. I think that's because the question probably wasn't worded as best it could have been, but this gave us some guidance in how we as organizations are making decisions on how to fund ALS research. Excuse me. One of the most interesting things that I got out of this survey, and this is just 5 responses from a number that were provided, was the reasons that folks gave for not funding ALS research in the previous fiscal year. And again, I'm not trying to make the case here that we should all be funding ALS research. I know that every organization has its own mission. And I think that's important to recognize, but these are some things that folks reported back. I didn't put the organizations next to them. You probably see your responses up there. Not enough money to pay for it. Research, like I said, is not part of the mission. We're very interested, but we're not able to do it. We don't have the resources in our country to actually do research. There are very few researchers in our country, et cetera. So as a community, we can start thinking about maybe some of those things and how we can connect folks that are looking to fund research to maybe some researchers that are looking for dollars. Just a quick comment on collaboration. Again, there's a lot of data that folks reported in collaboration, and I'll continue to figure out how to best put that together so you can visually see the responses. But by far, Project Mind stood out as an area that folks felt was their top, if not their only, collaboration as they defined it. There were 7 folks that responded that way. And I think as we've seen that very unique global program grow over the last few years, that shouldn't come as much of a surprise. But I did want to recognize you all reported that back. In many cases, it was the only collaboration, but it was the most oftenly reported collaboration. Like I said, there are very many examples given for collaborations with other nonprofits, as well as folks gave collaborations partnering with patients specifically. And I thought that was really interesting, and I just didn't have a chance to put it up here deeply on the slide. So my proposed next steps, and we can talk through this, obviously, Carol, with the group and on the board, is to try to gather that remaining information from the members. There are 3 other members that I need to gather at least a yes or no from. Confirm with individual members this information. I've asked Emer Martin at my lab to start to, what I say, validate this information. Go back and try to see if there's some backup through annual reports, et cetera, for this, so we can have some greater confidence here. I think a lot of folks had a $1 million number. Maybe it's really $870,642. So how can we try to validate this information and give you all really as accurate information as possible? So Emer started that process, and I may reach out to some of you folks to help us with that. I want to try to obviously propose that we look at refining basic and clinical research expenditures. Again, this crosses over, whether it be genetics or preclinical work and mouse models or fly models, et cetera. So I want to try to, maybe provide you some more information about how really that distribution occurs. Refine that collaboration question. Look at some of those collaborations that were reported and others in the annual reports, and give us some greater information about how we're all collaborating together and where maybe some gaps are, and more importantly, where some more opportunities are for us to collaborate in the ALS research space. And then I've also asked Emer to start to dig in, at least in publicly available information, in the last couple of years. And this actually came out with a conversation with Dr. Dickey, where he felt really it was important to not look at a single time point. And I tell my patients this all the time, one dot on a slide is a single time point. What can you really tell? If you give me a second time point, it kind of gives me a line. 3 time points gives me a trend. So if we're trying to define ALS research trends in this space, and really the ALS research trends of this alliance, I think we certainly need to try to get at least 3 time points, and I've asked Emer to start that work as best as possible. I would propose that with $64 million being funded by this alliance and its membership, paid for by probably most part our patients and families, that is an incredibly proud thing that we should share and be loud and proud about. So I hope at the end of this process, we will be able to, as an organization, and I'm happy to take the lead on this, write up a very short piece to be published in the ALS journal, which all of you that picked up your packet earlier today, you'll find a copy of it in there. It's a widely distributed journal in ALS research, and it may try to highlight to the researchers out there the important work that nonprofit organizations do, the member organizations that this alliance does, to fund the research that they're doing every day. So finally, just want to say thank you all for your responses. I have a few more to get from folks, so I will hunt you down. Mostly I want to recognize Emer Martin, who's on loan here from Ireland, and an intern at the ALS Therapy Development Institute, for doing all of this work over the last couple of months. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions?
Yes.
I thought there might be.
Sure. Do you want me to take questions? Or
Yeah, no, I think we've got 5 minutes for questions, and then we can expand more when we have discussion as well.
Sure.
How's that?
Yeah. Sorry, the mics.
Thanks for doing this work, Rob. I think it's important actually when you're looking at your time frame, you may want to go 1 year pre-ice bucket challenge, because I know ours would be 15 million of that 65. And I think it's important then that it helps us to express what the amounts were prior to and then post-ice bucket. And that will also help to contextualize hopefully some of the results that come out of it as well, so that we can again advocate for greater funding.
I think that's really smart, and not to be argumentative. I think we want to, today is kind of today, and I think not all organizations made the choice to spend huge amounts of money. So some of our organizations, like yours and mine, and the ALS Association, have made huge investments. But I want to make sure that we're being honest and not trying to kind of game the data. I certainly would advocate to have a note that these numbers may be inflated by once in a millennia fundraising activity, but the data is the data. So, yeah.
Back.
Bob, is there any, I guess I'm just trying to think this through in my head, but as you do follow up, is there any opportunity to do sort of here's where we are now, and, I thought everybody could hear me.
I can hear you, Barb.
Oh, thank you. That's why Sarah's reelected to the board. Anyway, but as we do a look forward to sort of like to the ALS Association, what do you anticipate your spending levels in research are going to be going forward? Are you going to are you going to, is it your intent to fall back closer to where you were pre-ice bucket? In our case, that would not be true. But is it, or, what does that look like so that we can collectively, globally, sort of get a handle on that?
Yeah, so this is kind of getting to your point. I think the point that I would like to make, and I certainly want to see how the data plays out, is to try to explain that if we want to keep the pace of funding research at the historic levels that I think our organizations are doing, we need to make the case to do that. And I worry that if we go back too far and just kind of see this growth, I think we have to make that case. Yeah, I think that, when we see that dip, obviously research is not going to be funded at the level that we want. I want to show people what's possible today, that we're all funding a lot of research, and hopefully that if folks see big numbers and big progress, they'll want to be part of that a lot more.
But it might suggest false success, though.
Again, I want to look at the data. I mean, I think not every organization saw huge windfalls from the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, so some of our organizations did. So I do want to look at the data and just see how it plays out. I guess I'm just trying to be cautious on that. And Barb, to the perspective about where we're going in research, I think if this type of analysis can help organizations in the Alliance maybe make some decisions about strategically where it wants to go individually as organizations and together, that would be great.
Okay.
One other comment that I would make is that it's okay. I also don't want us to send any message that says that everyone has to fund research.
Yeah.
We also want to send clear messages that it's okay.
Yes. Barb, that's a
All right.
really, really important
All right,
point. Thank you.
We better move on. Okay, I think we've just got 2 more questions. Yeah.
Rob, how do you categorise healthcare research in this? For example, the investment that an organisation might make in a new electric wheelchair for people with neurological conditions. Basic clinical, or should we actually have a healthcare investment area as well?
I agree with you, Rod. We really should, and I think one of the things that I truly wasn't thinking much about in capturing this was how to capture that information. A lot of investment by organizations is in looking at whether it be assistive technology or healthcare research that you're talking about, epidemiology, et cetera. So I think that's really important, and I think as we dig into this, it's important that we separate that out. I was thinking about the audience here being basic and clinical researchers, but I think that's a really important point.
Pablo, did you have a question? Last one. We better just at the front here, Pablo's been, last question. We can have some more questions as we have to.
It's more a comment than a question. First of all, congratulations, Rob. This is really important and really, really necessary. We just wanted to comment that we as associations we don't all have the same mission. Many of us we work on treatment and care, right, for patients and their everyday life. And we always say that the alliance should really make a stress on all the different interests that are within our organizations. There is a huge diversity, and we should work on that, on the different interests. Of course, research is crucial, and we're not going to leave aside that fact. But I think it's important to work on the different missions and interests of the alliance, of the different organizations of the alliance.
Yeah, I agree. And Carol, just to wrap up, I hope that what you just said inspires us as an organization to do this similar type of reporting on all those other good works that we fund and try to capture the dollar amount that we're investing in our organizations in exactly those types of things that you're talking about that aren't research. We should be really proud about the work that we do and the dollars that we spend. So hopefully this will lead to capturing those dollars as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Please thank Rob. That was a great presentation. Thanks. Looking forward to further data coming out of that. It's really interesting. It's great. And thank you, everybody, for contributing. That's an amazing response you got from everybody, so it's really good. Okay, so now we're going to go on and talk about our strategic plan, what we've achieved this year, and what you want us to focus on in the coming 12 months. Now, this is an interactive session, so if at any point I say anything that you don't understand or you'd like me to elaborate on, please raise your hands and I'll try and explain, especially for those people who are new to the Alliance. I will just take you through our current strategic plan so that we can set the scene, so you can see where we're going over the next 3 years or so, what our overarching strategic plan is, and how we just then try and break it down into some annual achievements so that you can see that we are achieving outcomes that you have actually identified that you want us to try and work together as an alliance to achieve. So I'll just a few slides here to take us through the strategic plan. Our goal is a world free of ALS-MND. We have the tagline or the branding, united in the worldwide fight against ALS-MND. And I guess we also have the hashtag now, ALS-MND without borders, so that's probably something we should add to this. Our vision, we will engage with our members, prospective members, and other organisations to share resources globally, to advance awareness, and to promote the support of people living with ALS-MND worldwide. So that is our vision. That's what guides us. Our values. The Alliance is committed to the following values. Our service is to the organisations supporting people living with ALS-MND. We will contribute to improving quality of life for people living with ALS-MND. We encourage, support and value innovation and research for people living with ALS-MND. We respect and value the contribution made by all members. We act responsibly, maintain professional integrity, and engage and collaborate with the ALS-MND community worldwide. Our mission statement as the International Alliance of ALS-MND Associations is to promote optimal care and support for all people living with ALS-MND, to facilitate information exchange and education at an international level, to encourage collaboration, dissemination, and translation of ALS-MND research. So we have 5 strategic objectives for the years 2016 to 2019, and these objectives we all worked on together at the workshop last year. So they are focused on advocacy, membership, partnership, information, and funding. So I'll just take you through each of these strategic objectives and what we have done this year. So with respect to advocacy, our advocacy statement is to influence communities, governments, and other international organisations to support the interests of people living with ALS MND globally. So last year when we all got together and split up into working groups and had discussions on this particular strategic objectives, some goals were set. And those goals were to update the PALS, People Living with MND Rights document, so that all members can use that updated version and for it to be relevant and to people living with ALS MND. To launch that document on Global Day and to have that available to all members to support advocacy, both nationally and internationally. So the outcomes of those goals, I think, have all been achieved, which is fabulous. It has been approved, it was launched on Global Day and formed part of our Global Day campaign. And as Rachel reported yesterday, we have official endorsement from over 26 member associations, and those logos have been uploaded to our website. And we've shared the document widely on social media, and we've distributed it to members, obviously, to support your advocacy efforts in your own countries. Now, with the workshops this year, we thought we'd do things a little bit different. I think we got a bit of feedback last year that the breaking into groups wasn't quite working for people. So what we thought we might do is take each of these strategic objectives, and once I've given you a little bit of an overview of what we've done this year, we'll have a group discussion on what you'd like us to do in the coming year. So hopefully this will work. We'll see how we go. We have board members around the room, hopefully, who will help to facilitate discussion, and I encourage you all now to sort of get involved. So here we are again with the advocacy statement, and we'd like to have a discussion really about what would success look like on this strategic objective. What advocacy, international advocacy, what would success look like to you? How should we use this PALS, People Living with MND Rights document? How can we use that as a global advocacy tool? What other position statements do you think that we need to develop? That's another thing maybe we can have a discussion about now. So let's see how we go. We'll open the floor to discussion, questions, thoughts. We want your ideas, and hopefully we can have a bit of a dialogue and discussion all together this year. But who's going to kick us off? Nobody? Silence. Gorjan, thank you.
Well, it's also possible, of course, to look at this globally, but I think it's also a regional thing. How do people think about that? Because I think it's very important to have the global guidelines that we have now, but I can imagine it's different for South America and Asia or Europe and United States. So how are we going to cope with the regional or even per country discussion of this?
Mm-hmm. Has anyone taken the patient rights document and actually created something for their own country, translated it, or maybe amended it to be more relevant to their region? Has anybody done that? Has anyone taken the translation? Sally?
I guess it's a translation, but we've got the charter which we originally got people to sign up to. We got 33,000 signatures. And now what we're doing with it is taking it to local councils, so local government responsible for provision of services, and getting local councils to sign up to it. I think we've got 26 local councils so far signed up. So really we're using it as a sign up to this, and then in the event that we find anything in your area that's not working very well, we can come back and say, guess what, you signed up to this, and you know you're not delivering it on the ground. So it's a leverage tool, really.
Mm-hmm. And that charter actually came out of the alliance, original alliance.
I don't know which way around it came,
I think
but
it
the two
is,
things
yeah.
are very similar.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we've used it a lot. It is one of our major campaigning tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else developed a charter sort of based on these rights? Amruta at the back there. Oh, Pablo, do? Oh, sorry, we'll come to you next.
This year we just used the document, the rights document, to raise awareness. We did certain actions for that. What we will try next year is to make it be declared of public interest by the National Congress. That would be our goal for next year. Just that.
And up the back.
No, I wanted to make a point that in some countries, like in India, we don't have any special guideline for rare neurological disorder. So how can Alliance help us to put the pressure on the government? Because we are in tune with not much of experience. So can Alliance help us, like guide us, or assign a personnel whom we can directly contact by email or phone, and who could actually help us, walk us this way of making policy with the government?
Thank you, Himanji. Well, I think that's a need that has now been identified, and hopefully there is a member organisation that can offer some help there. And I think maybe the idea of a charter, whether that would work in your country, and that's one option, to develop a charter.
I just wanted to say that we should have some chartered plan that how Alliance is going to help each country to make whatever the way they want to start the advocacy with the government.
So that's starting point, how to start the advocacy. Yeah. Rod? Good to have another. Yeah. Be good to have another mic. Yes, please. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks. Look, I think one of the ways to measure success would be for all of us to be using the charter or the rights document with every application that we put in, or every approach we make to government or to formal bodies. Make a commitment to attach it, because the rights document is comprehensive and broad enough to actually, you could be asking for the garbage to be taken away more often, and you could justify it with an international rights document. And I think that would be success, when we're all using it regularly, every submission.
Good idea. Yeah, I think that's something to consider, certainly. Anybody else got any thoughts? Or anything that we should be... Oh, over here. Tatiana.
Hi, everyone. Just to comment that in South America, for example, Brazil, we have some statements, but we know that South America, many countries, doesn't have, like India, they are suffering. So I don't know what we could do, probably what he said, to put something in the website and something that we can share for these countries like Paraguay, Uruguay, Venezuela. They are suffering without this advocacy. And so I think we can help them. In Brazil, actually, we have a lot of things, not much, but our patients has some help, some support from our associations and Argentina, but many countries doesn't have. So it's an idea to do something for them.
Thank you. So people are using the patient rights, not patient, the person living with ALS MND rights document. I hope you are. And if you haven't already formally endorsed it, I encourage you to do that. Oh, just a minute. Someone's got the mic. Yep, go.
Yes, if I were to go to everyone's website, would I see that you're a member of this alliance?
You should do, but I don't think everybody actually,
That's my point.
actually puts the logo
But
very
that's my point.
clearly. Yeah, so
And-
that's something
Yeah,
that we
I
should all be
was-
considering, isn't it?
I was pretty much unaware that this even existed through the years,
Yeah.
so just an idea.
Yeah, that's a good point. We will obviously take out the key things that come out of this discussion and distribute it after this meeting as well. You're typing away. Thank you, Rachel. Rob, did you have a comment?
I was just going to ask, there was a lot of people that signed or endorsed this, as you said?
26
26
organisations,
out
yes.
of,
Out of 30,
Yeah.
50 organisations, yeah. So there's still some people some organisations and members. Rach, did you want to?
So we have 15 members, but there's only about 40 of them are actual organizations as opposed to
Yeah.
other kinds of
so that's a
Okay, but
great-
there are still some that haven't formally endorsed it yet.
It's a great accomplishment
Yeah,
to
yeah.
have that many.
Yeah, it's good. All right, so any ideas for any other position statements that we should be working on? Yes, Andrea.
I would suggest, what I'm hearing across the room is that there's certainly wide adoption of this document, and of course we adopted it early on as well. But I would suggest that, so as not to confuse the marketplace, that we stick with this document and make sure that it's very widely dispersed, as Rod suggested, with every government filing, with everything that you do, so that we raise awareness to a very consistent message. And I would advocate that we not move to another position statement till we've really taken this and made it very, very universal.
Thank you, that's a good point, thank you. Okay, we might move on to the next one, but there's some good things that came out of that. And as I said, we'll distribute the key points that come out of each of these discussions to you. And hopefully we can all act on them too, act on some of the ideas that come out. So membership. To grow membership and promote the establishment of support organisations where none currently exist. So last year, you suggested that we had online resources be created to communicate the benefits of membership. Rachel has sent around a member testimonial form, and that's been posted on the Alliance website, and collection of responses is ongoing. So that's something I encourage you to go onto the website and complete, especially after last night's Warm and Fuzzy. I think there were lots of wonderful testimonials last night about the benefits of being a part of this alliance. So after this meeting, before you get caught up in your everyday work, try and go online and complete a testimonial for your organisation. We have had 8 new members since the last meeting, so that's pretty impressive, isn't it? And we want to continue to grow that. And we've also undertook at last year's meeting to increase engagement with members and potential members in the Asia-Pacific region and support the establishment of the Pan-Asian Consortia for the Research and Treatment of ALS, PACTALS. So our mid-year member engagement visit was to Asia, and it actually coincided with the PACTALS meeting, so that's why we sort of chose that timing, so that we could incorporate as much as possible into that visit. And we met with Hamanji, was from Asha EK Hope was there, which was fabulous. It was that opportunity to have a lot of organisations in the same place at the same time, so we didn't have to travel too far. Hamanji was there at the PACTALS meeting, as were MND Malaysia, MND Taiwan, and there was also a potential member from ALS Indonesia that we've been having contact with over the last year or so. So she came along, which was lovely to catch up with her. And we also went to visit the Korean ALS Association, who were just admitted as members at our board meeting the other day. So out of that visit came a new member, which was fabulous, and some new potential members too. What we also were able to do at that PACTALS meeting was facilitate MND Malaysia and the woman from Indonesia to link up and do a visit. So we were there as well. Is our MND Malaysia member here? You are here, you've made it. Fabulous, welcome. It's nice to see you, so thank you for coming. So that's your first visit to the Alliance meetings, which is fabulous, so welcome, thank you. So we actually presented also at Pactals. We talked about the work of the alliance there. There were a number of countries from the Asia-Pacific region represented at that meeting who are not yet members, so that was a good opportunity just to talk about what the alliance does. And then we were able to just hop across the ocean to Perth and to also combine a site visit for the 2019 meetings there. So we've achieved quite a lot on that front, I suppose, over the last 12 months. But where to next? What are the next steps related to this strategic objective? More importantly, what would success look like to you? To you as members, what would success look like for membership, for the growth of membership? How do we go about that? How do we continue to grow membership? How can you get involved in growing membership, in supporting emerging organisations in your region, supporting struggling organisations in your region, and encouraging them to become part of this alliance? So again, open the floor up for discussion and interested in your views and thoughts on this strategic objective. Who's going to start us off? Pablo? Down here.
We consider that there should be like groups, subgroups from the alliance, regional subgroups from the alliance, in order to carry out this goal. So we can develop this mission. In South America, as Tatiana was saying, that there are many countries that are not present because they don't have any structure, they don't have a consolidated group of people. So what we were discussing yesterday with other countries from South America, also from Spain, is to form a region, kind of a group that is that is also linked to the alliance. We don't want to form something that is peripheral, something that is isolated. We would like to be under the umbrella of the alliance, let's say, but a regional group for, we would say, more than South America, Latin America, plus Spain, let's say. If Portugal was here, it could be part of that region as well. So we can really develop this kind of mission, you know, to add more countries for membership, but mostly to help them. We have some countries that are really isolated in every sense of the word, not only as related with respect to ALS, but there are countries that really need help. Tatiana was mentioning Venezuela, I would say Bolivia, Peru, and Paraguay are other examples. And we should study a little bit further what is going on in Central America. It's a vast region. It's a really extensive region. But I think what we should do is that to work in a group together, a work group, a regional work group, under the umbrella of the alliance, if the alliance approves this, of course.
Efrat.
I have a dilemma because I'm the representative of the Middle East. I'm the only country for the Middle East. I know that we haven't contacted any Arab countries yet. I'm not the person to do that, unfortunately, politically wise, but I think the Arab or Muslim part of the world is not being yet addressed by the alliance. Since we are doing in-house, in Israel, project for the Arab sector in Israel, we do develop now relationship through Facebook and other social media networks with Arab people from around the Middle East, but I'm not sure, and I would love to hear if any of you have other ideas for us, how to get into these countries. Out of the Arab countries, we can go into 2 of them, and I know there are many more, so I'm not sure how to approach this problem, but it's a problem because the Arab countries are definitely not covered by any of our work.
Grant. Thanks, Ifran.
Thank you. I just wonder if I could ask a question. Has there been any thought for the alliance approaching, say, the World Health Organization or the United Nations, and also through countries such as, shall we say, the ones that are, say, more developed and have representation at the UN, and try and use that as some way of engaging, particularly in your area? I'm thinking for my case that we could approach our government and our UN representative and use that as some form of advocacy. Thinking about, we have quite a well-developed health and disability commission. So, for instance, the patient rights charter that the Alliance put out is already incorporated under our health and disability commission and comes under our commissioner. So we can easily make representations, and I'm sure in Australia it's the same. And we can use that as a way and a means of engaging at the political level, at the top level, and trying to get some, I don't call it pressure, but influence and engagement at that level as to explaining to the political and the diplomatic people the advantage of the alliance, perhaps.
Rod?
This might be a wild-ass idea, but many of us have been to university. Most of us, if you've been to university, are members of your alumni. And most of your fellow alumni members don't necessarily live in your country. So, for example, I was lucky enough to go to Stanford for a course on not-for-profit leadership. And I have an alumni group that spans the world. Because one of the problems that we have is, how do we find these other organisations? And we need other people to find them for us. So perhaps we could each take on a role of communicating with your alumni group and asking them to find other ALS-MND organisations in places where we're not currently represented.
And engaging through the delegates at the symposium too, because there must be researchers, I would imagine, from countries that don't have representation. So, yeah.
We're communicating with the Russian-speaking countries, and we see people there, for example, in Belarus, people who are involved there in helping people with ALS, but they do not have funding for, even for paying for one coordinator, for example, to just to make it work, because always it starts from physicians who care for people, and they do not have enough time to coordinate all the things around the patient. So if it could be possible to find funding for even one coordinator per country, so it could make serious changes. So it's one of their ideas.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Some interesting ideas have come out of that discussion. I think it's only the start of a discussion, though, in a lot of cases here, isn't it? I think we've had the discussion around regional groups, and I think there are some regional groups that are already established, such as the Baltic Alliance and the Asia-Pacific region sort of working together too to have a regular symposium. I think we heard from our Chinese delegates that there will be an Asia-Pacific symposium next year. So there are those sort of alliances, regional alliances coming together, so that's something maybe Pablo and Dario want to talk further with the Spanish-speaking delegates, and and see how that goes and where that goes. How to reach out to the different regions is something I think that we all need to continue thinking about and coming up with solutions such as Rod's solution and sharing those solutions. And we'll certainly talk as a board as to where to next as well. Teresa, and yep.
Hi, just one thing as an idea. Teresa was commenting that she received some comments or some calls from some people in South America, for instance in Uruguay, and what she has prepared is a package, so that it's, whether it's a patient or a physician who contacts you, she has a package prepared telling her, you know, what the different steps there are that she could, that person could take to found an association or some kind of organization. What do they need to do? Do they need to go to a notary public or whatever, or talk to the government or whatever it is, so that they have that, she has that prepared, okay, so she can send it as soon as someone contacts her. Maybe that would be an idea for you, even though they still need the resources and everything, but they still, you know, they can start working and trying to create the association or something similar, and then go from then on. Okay.
So those language-specific packages of information would be a good start, I think, wouldn't it? Yeah, endorsed by the Alliance or whatever. All right, we better move on because time is marching on. But we'll, as I said, we'll collate all those discussions together, and hopefully you'll continue to talk through as the year progresses. Partnerships. So this really is the cornerstone of the Alliance, I think, and we heard yesterday many examples of partnerships that just happen when you're here at these meetings, which is fabulous. And it certainly is one of our key objectives, is to promote, support and enhance the Alliance Partnership Programme. So last year we discussed actually formalising the needs and offers programme, sort of bringing it more up to date with our website and everything. We talked about creating a members-only forum, and regional mentoring groups developed and formalised. So the needs and offers programme has been incorporated into the forum feature in the website. So we now have the members forum that you can go into, and members can identify a need, such as the one, Manji, you have just talked about today. You can go in and put that in the forum as a need, and hopefully other members will go in and see that need and offer assistance if they're able to. And it is a protected space, so it's not open to the general public. So the forum is a protected space for you all. So I hope you've all had a chance to log in and have a look. So that members site has been created in the website now, so that took up quite a bit of time this year, but it's hopefully will be used by you all. And this is something that members have requested, so I hope now that you will actually go in and use it. And we've just sort of started the Google Sheet, which has been developed and distributed to members, and what we need to do is now sort of enliven that now and start these mentorships happening. So I put query partnerships funded since last meeting. I didn't update my slide. I think it's 3, is it 2 or 3 partnerships we've funded since this time last year?
2 partnerships, that we also fund the travel grants.
And the travel grants to come here. Yeah, but the actual partnerships. So for those of you that are new to the Alliance, we do have an Alliance Support Grant program. And the Alliance Support Grants fund organisations to come to this meeting. So you can apply for a grant to actually help fund your travel to get to this meeting. You can also apply for a grant for partnerships. So to exchange information, support, advocacy, with another member organisation. So that funding is available. So think about that. If ideas have come out of this meeting today, think about applying and formalising a partnership approach, and hope we get some more applications. So what next? What more do we need to do for the partnerships? What would success look like in this particular objective? What do partnerships mean to you? What does that mean to you? As an individual or as your organisation? Have you been part of a partnership? How do you foster, how do we foster these synergies? Just some thoughts here. And what types of partnerships should we be focusing on? Again, throw open the floor for discussion. Who would like to kick off? Kathy, of course, that's good. a veteran partnership person.
Good morning. I'd like us to be aware that partnering is a two-way street, and we do have people with subject matter expertise who are willing to share, but I'd also like to see the people that we're sharing with returning that, because there's no point in saying, we'll partner with you. We need to know what you need. And when we find out what you need, first of all, we can help you get it, but it's up to you to continue that. And unfortunately, in the time I've been here, I've seen us give grants to people to come to the meeting, and they show up for the first little while, and then they disappear. So what I'd like to see is, if you have a travel grant, that you get together in a formal 1-hour meeting with a member of the board who's interested in partnership to say, this is here, we're here, this is what we want to do, this is what we want to follow up. And then have some reporting mechanism so you can say, as a partner, this is what I got out of coming to the meeting, and this is what we're going to do next. Because it's not just a one-off, here's your money, show up at the meeting. This is an ongoing developmental process to meet your needs as developing organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Good points. So what does partnership mean to people? Gudjon, yeah.
What partnerships did you support this year?
We heard yesterday from the partnership with South Africa. Are you here? No. So we heard yesterday about that partnership. So developing the resources for young carers, caregivers. The other partnership has just been funded. I don't think we haven't notified them yet, so you'll find out. The meeting in Taiwan, yeah, that was funded. So there's a variety of partnerships that are funded, but what we need is for people to apply. We encourage you to apply. I guess for new members particularly, it's getting that idea of what a partnership is and what does it mean.
How high is the support?
It's up to £1,500.
Yeah.
Mm.
Which is rather low.
Rather low.
Yeah, I think we should increase the amount. So it has to be something that makes things happen.
Yeah.
Just traveling cost is huge.
It's increasing. Yeah, no, that's a good point, Gudjon. I think that's something the board probably does need to look at, particularly if we are able to get some dedicated funding for partnerships as well. We could certainly look at that increasing, subject to our treasurer's approval.
I think it was only to say that the partnerships don't always need to be funded by the Alliance.
Right.
So I was thinking, and I was delighted and surprised by the presentation from our Russian colleagues yesterday, because I think that was a partnership created by membership of the Alliance, but not necessarily, doesn't necessarily show up as a dollar cost on the on your accounts. So I think we need to celebrate those in some way, and I think maybe if people could see, as I hope they did yesterday, the difference that it can make and the help it can be, then it will encourage more people to come forward. So I think it's some way of making alive and obvious to people the benefit that there is in them.
Yep, no, I agree. And there is an area on the website that gives the stories, partnerships, and there's usually a photograph, but we need you to submit those stories. And we can also use the blog now. Part of our enhancing the website this year was to create the blog. So if you have created a partnership, not necessarily funded by the Alliance, blog about it. Let's really get the message out there. Efrat? Yeah.
To me, partnership is about transferring knowledge and not needing to inventing the wheels all over again. If someone does something, so everyone else can learn from them. And to Gudjon's point, I don't think it has to involve traveling. There are so many ways these days that we can transfer information and help people without traveling. So if a travel is needed, so the Alliance can help, but it can involve translation of material, it can involve establishing a website. It can involve so many other things that it doesn't have to come with a plane ticket. So if we need to transfer information to a different place and adjust it according to the culture and political issues and healthcare system, that we can invest the money there, and then £1,500 can be more than enough for that.
Good point. Yes, Yumiko?
Rob will help me. I speak in Japanese. Sorry. すいません。大変重要なことなんですけれども、災害時の助け合いのパートナーシップを作っておくべきだと思います。日本は、3年前に、大変大きな地震に見舞われた時に台湾の人たちに大変助けていただきました。その時はパートナーシップっていうプログラムなかったんですけども、そういうものをあらかじめ作っておくことによってお互いに助け合いができるという安心感を得ることができる。
So she thinks it's very important to create a partnership for when there's a natural disaster occurring. A few years ago, there was a big earthquake in Japan, and the Taiwan Association helped them a lot. And she thinks it's important to set something up for when that happens, earthquakes, tsunami, that kind of disaster. So, yeah. So she thinks it's important to set this up ahead of time before a disaster occurs, particularly maybe among regional organizations. People in the same area can work together to set up a kind of network to prepare for when these disasters happen. So maybe the Alliance can facilitate that, but so, for example, in Japan, the place where they produce the nutrients, the food they put in the stomach, the nutrients, the place where they produced that in Japan was destroyed in the tsunami, so they couldn't get it for a while. They had to import it very quickly from Taiwan. So Taiwan helped them out in that case, but they hadn't set that up ahead of time. But to prepare for disasters, they should do something in advance in areas where disasters obviously occur. And life support facilities like electricity and gasoline for generators, that kind of thing.
Yeah, good.
Right. And that should be done, again, on a regional basis.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a good point. And I guess that's where coming to these meetings and getting to know people from your region really helps, hopefully, to really grow those relationships. Professor Sa? Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Ms. Yumiko just talking about the partnership between Taiwan and Japan. We have a very close relationship between each other, and we have support during the 2011. Yeah, there's a big drama in Sendai, and at that time, many AIDS patients they lost of the nutrition support, and they need in emergencies. Support for the nutrition. So we support the cans from Taiwan by DHL to send to Japan. And also once that there's a typhoon in Taiwan, hurricanes, and we have a support from the Japan, the previous president, Hashimoto. She has a reserve fund to support our countries. So I think the partnership between each other is quite good. And recently, you know that in Japan, they launched a drug called Redicard. And we cannot get the drugs from Taiwan, but some of our patients go to Japan for this treatment. So I think that each other in Asia Pacific, and now including China, we hope to have good partnership together in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Partnerships in action. That's great to hear. Yeah, and then we better go on.
What you spoke to about a natural disaster, I would really suggest that the board really consider what that looks like. Because often, I know in our circumstance, we have many things along the way, not just waiting for a natural disaster, which is incredibly important. How do we do that? You know, how do I get goods to South America or to Russia or any other part of the world if we were to have them? But at the same time, right? Our families are actually living a natural disaster every day. And so how do we get family what we need, the support that we need to them, right? So if that's just a huge conversation, I think.
It is, yeah.
And getting back to the Middle East, we have a family in Kuwait that was trying to create something. And so I will follow up with them to see what's going on, and I just need to be guided into where I bring that information.
Thank you. Yeah, great. Yeah?
Yeah, without spending money, Steve, you showed us that the situation is healthy. The good thing, what happened was in Holland that they started off swimming in Holland, and this year we talked to them that they would spend 1% of the international city swims to the alliance, and the goal to do with the money is to raise the amount of partnerships and memberships. So start swimming around the world, because 1% will be donated to the alliance, which we can use for partnerships and memberships. So without spending all the money, because you don't even have it yet, there is probably some money to get this thing flying.
Thank you. That's a fabulous opportunity, but it's also something I think as a board we're going to have to really focus on, how we spend that money and how we manage it and grow the program.
We have, I think, a success story of visiting MNDA, and thank you very much for Celia and the whole organization. But what I think, we have a short story of helping people with multidisciplinary teams of helping people for ALS, and we came across the problem that we do not have, a checklist both for, foundation and for medical and social service, because only in 4 years we realized that, for example, palliative care is very important. And when we started, everybody, both patients and ourselves, we thought that ventilation is the first thing, and palliative care is somewhere it's not so important. And so if we had this, checklist that all medical service, they should have they should have knowledge and skills in these very topics, and you should just put marks that's done, and we can. And now we are making ourselves this list of skills and topics that we should know to be good in multidisciplinary help. So if Alliance could help us in providing this kind of document, it would be really helpful, because we can then just check if this or that foundation and medical service is ready to help patients with ALS, because we ourselves, but we were doing our best, but it was not enough to know at the start that we need all of this knowledge and things.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think just looking at my UK colleagues over here, the NICE guidelines, I think, is something that would be worthwhile looking at as well. Yeah. I think we better move on to the next one now, because we're running out of time. Lots of discussion. So on the information front, our objective is to facilitate, promote and review the exchange of information on ALS MND care, education and research. So I think as we're going through these objectives, I hope you're seeing that each objective does not really stand alone. They all are linked. So that's something I think is very clear as we move through. Some of the suggestions that we were given last year were for resources in a variety of languages to be available on the website. Now, obviously, translating resources professionally is very expensive and time-consuming. You can use Google Translate, but what we're trying to do now is use the existing links page on the website and ensure that we have links to your information from your organisations in different languages and have a clear little overview. Now, that hasn't been fully achieved yet. That's going to be something that we will focus on now that we've got an administrative coordinator to assist us with. So that is something we may call on you to assist us with to develop further during the year. We've created the Alliance blog, as I've already indicated. Now that blog will only continue to be relevant and live if you all contribute. So we really need you to get engaged in providing little blog posts, vlogs, video posts. Let's keep it live. Let's keep promoting what we do and what you do, the work that you do to support people with ALS, MND in your countries. Greater outreach and engagement with members. Obviously, the newsletter has grown considerably this year. So we're obviously getting a lot more member engagement on that front. And we've been talking about how we can sort of better manage that so that it's not quite so overwhelming for everybody with all the information, but it's great that so many people are involved. I haven't actually got the numbers for Twitter and Facebook, but I think Rachel reported on that yesterday. Information available on the research funds provided by member associations. Well, we've heard from Rob today, so that's been achieved and is ongoing, which is fabulous. And ideas for future research collaborations identified to encourage cross-organisational engagement. Again, that's something that's going to come out of the work that Rob's doing. So that's sort of what we've been focusing on this year. Now over to you. What does success in information exchange look like to you? I think there is a lot of sharing within the Alliance, and I think the example yesterday of the Russian visit to MND Association really showed how exchanging information can really spur on an organisation. But also, what areas of communication should we focus on? Communication is huge these days with social media, the website, blogging. Is it useful to you? What more should we do? What shouldn't we be doing? Over to you. Any ideas? No? Silence. Yeah. Oh, Kathy. Yeah.
I think that the board and the membership has done an amazing job in terms of exchange of information. You've certainly tagged on to what's going on with social media. So I think we need to give ourselves a little bit of credit because 5 years ago, none of this existed. And I think we're going to go forward, but not everything needs to be perfect at every moment. I think we're doing a great job. And Efrat is right. You don't have to go somewhere to communicate information. And we all know each other now, so you've got people that you can contact by email in a millisecond, and some of you are so good that you get back in a millisecond. So congratulations to the board. Thank you for doing all that work.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Yep. Oh, behind you.
I'm new to the Alliance. I'm just wondering, as you've described some of the things that are in place, are there groups that are set up? So for example, my area is client services. So are there opportunities to use some of the means that you've established to focus on client service topics rather than bombarding everybody with every topic? Have we subsetted things into client services, research, advocacy, what have you?
Rachel's nodding. Do you want to reply to that one? You can get engaged.
I would really like to see people start using that members-only forum that's on our website. It's relatively new, but that's a perfect example of how it can be used, that you can create a topic, a chain, and you say, client services. And then you explain what you might need or want, what you're looking for, what kind of information you'd like to have shared, and people can share it with you and respond in that thread. And then you can create a different thread under each topic area.
Bob?
So I have a couple of thought and then a question. My first is, and Rachel, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I'm not necessarily a person who's going to go on and pose a question on a member forum. I might, however, like a certain resource, and so within the members only, I also think we need to have a resource section where we can actually put in model practices and those kinds of things, because by the time I wait and go through a chat situation, I'm on to 15 other things, and I may not get back to that. So that's just one thought. The second thing that I ask is, when is social media not appropriate? When is social media not appropriate, and what kinds of things should be discussed outside of a social media forum? And believe me, as someone who takes arrows of love and bullets of death every day on social media, I just would like to understand how we can actually better exchange information without always having to air everything out there for everyone else to see.
Thank you, Barbie. I think that's a common thread in some of our conversations over the last few days. Manji?
I do agree that we should have a resource information where people can go and look at information whenever required. Like, for example, in the health section, like every association usually has like guideline of treatment of a certain disorder. So I think we should go in the direction of formulating guideline of like maybe a vitamin. Like a lot of people will ask, is a vitamin C good, vitamin E is good, vitamin B12 is good or not. So somewhere with the scientific committee, we can have a guideline. Maybe say at least this is safe and maybe helpful.
So you're talking about guidelines for care and that kind of thing. Yeah, and I think maybe something we need to look at
Right.
is...
Till we get the cure, at least, physiotherapy.
Yeah.
Like some people will say physiotherapy is not good. Others will say physiotherapy is good. But what's the exact thing? Yeah, physiotherapy is good in the middle. We should not go overboard, not overboard. So this kind of guideline, if all the associations get the information, they can guide their own patients in their country.
Thank you. Yeah, good idea. Tammy? Maybe last one, and we better go on to the last objective.
Thank you. One of the other things that we had talked about at the board, I think, was actually even having a research panel to be able to vet some of the ideas that are coming forward or some of the potential treatments, so that we can then share that information out, at least within the alliance, not necessarily intended for you to disseminate then to your population, but to be sort of on that forefront of what do we see coming down. And so I think a few of us that have research directors were thinking about putting together a panel like that.
Rob?
Tammy, I think that's a great idea, and I'd love to participate in that. When you checked in and you got your little blue packet, if you open up the ALS journal, I think it's actually page 2. There's a thing called Untangling the ALS X-Files. If you're not familiar with ALS Untangled, it's a really great resource that I think is really well written for the layperson. And obviously it's in English, so that is a limitation of it. But it's a really great resource. I'd be happy to get a translator to do it for anybody's language if you want that. But we've covered a lot of things in there on various vitamins. And not everybody is going to agree on everything when it comes to care or research. There's lots of cultural differences, lots of scientific viewpoints. So I really think, Amanji, it's a really great point. But I think we got to try to do it in a way that kind of recognizes that all of us kind of approach this in different ways. But just a quick pitch for ALS Untangled as a resource for everybody.
Yeah. It's always a good place to go, I think. And I think also as we further develop the useful links area on the website, it might be a good idea to categorize so that we have an area that has guidelines from various countries, so you can quickly go to those guidelines. So we will rely on you, I think, to give us that information in the coming 12 months. Quick one for Kathy, go on.
I'm a member of the ALS Untangled group, but I wonder if, show of hands of how many other people are on that group?
Anyone else? Oh, quite a few. Yep.
Okay, that's good, because I think that's very useful, but it is patient-driven, so that patients request that the ALS Untangled group look at a specific treatment and make recommendations. Barb, do you want this?
Yeah, I read the ALS Untangled research, and recently I read about the lunar ridge, and I wanted to get that for some of my patients, but we don't get it in India. So I also wanted help how to get these supplements from outside the country to my country. So if Alliance can set up some kind of help to get the kind of supplement.
Okay, thank you. All right. Barb, do you want last question, last comment?
Let me also just say, and I know that I think Rob does this and others do this as well, but ALS Untangled, I know that Rick Bedlack, who is extremely involved in ALS Untangled and so forth, that sometimes there's not been enough hours in the day. So we actually fund part of Rick's time now so that he has more time to spend on ALS Untangled. So I think it's, what I would say is, feel free to, whether it's Kathy or Rob or the ALS Association, feel free, if you know of something that you want studied, to get it to any one of us, and we will then get that funneled back to Rick and the clinicians and science team to take a look at it. And by the way, if you haven't really been delving into that, it's fascinating what people are hearing might work, may work, and is likely to never work, but be looked at.
Thank you, Barb. Okay, our last objective is funding, a crucial objective. Steve's smiling. And I think just to set the scene, I guess, around funding, our objective is to build a sustainable operating and funding model for the Alliance. Funds are pretty limited for the Alliance. We really do rely on membership subscriptions as our main source of funding. Our other sources of funding are the few donations we may get from organisations and individuals. Not a lot, but we during the Ice Bucket Challenge we got a few. And our other source of funding is obviously also a very important source of funding is sponsorship for our meetings, with the aim of hopefully keeping the cost of attending these meetings as low as we possibly can. I know it's still very expensive, but we do need to cover cost of the meetings. And obviously, the more members we have, the more demands we have from our members to do more. And to do more, we need staff. So we have invested in another staff member now, purely because there is that demand, that you want us to do more, and we're trying to meet those needs, I guess. But in order to keep those staff members employed, we need to keep the funds coming in. So we've had the virtual global walk. I'm not sure we've made much money, but anyway, we tried. And maybe that's a model that we can grow a little bit more in the future, but certainly something we focused on this time, and we've tried. Another goal was to get funding from pharmaceuticals and others to support the partnership program. And we've heard from Gordian about the proposal now with the city swim boards to have a percentage of that, of the funds from those coming to the Alliance to support our partnership program. So that's something that we're really working on at the moment. We have a sponsorship proposal already drafted and approved by the board now, so that will be going out. And that's something we can also use to approach other opportunities, I guess. And sponsorship secured to ensure the annual meetings break even. So we had the wonderful support of Cytokinetics and also wonderful support from table sponsors. Ongoing support year on year from ALS Hope for the Allied Professionals Forum, which is fabulous. support from the ALS Association to fund the live streaming, and we managed to get sponsorship at very much last minute from Cytokinetics from the Pals Cals lunch, which is today. So they really are our only sources of funding. So we do need to think about other sources as we continue to grow. So what would a successful operating funding model look like? How can the Alliance fundraise without competing with members? I think that's something that's really important and something that we have discussed on a number of occasions. This is something we need to be very mindful of. What alternative funding sources could the Alliance look for, and what programs could attract sponsorship? And I guess we've identified the partnership one as the most obvious. And I think we've only got, we're eating into morning tea now, so maybe a quick 5-minute discussion on money. Any ideas, any thoughts? Barb, up the back.
Thanks. So one of the thoughts that I have had ever since we started, and I keep thinking and bringing it up, but I do think the Alliance is positioned well to look at some of, and I know that when we talk about competing, it gets tough, but what we need to recognize is that there are philanthropists and foundations who do not want to fund a single country or a single localized project to the US or whatever. And I always think of the Gates Foundation and some of those who really look globally and say, how can we have a global footprint and global impact? So I think it's a matter of spending the time to really look at who those are, and then with and among the Alliance, who may have some connections and who may have some willingness or the resources to help write the right type of funding proposals to go to those. Because they are going to be the places where all of our board members are going to go talk to so-and-so. Well, so-and-so doesn't want to do something only to benefit the ALS Association or ALS TDI, or they want something that is going to impact a worldwide footprint. And I think that we are missing out on that opportunity.
Yeah, good point, Barb. And I think our new employee, Rachel Blanton, has had some experience of grant writing, so that's something we're going to task her with in the coming months, to do that review of what grants are available. And if we can identify any, then will be the time to see if anybody here has contacts that can, introduce us to those. Yeah. Anything else? Anyone else got it on?
I think that is a big idea that you have, Barb. Let's try and find somebody. The other thing is, if I'm right, next year the Alliance will exist for 25 years. Maybe we can find some kind of fundraising fun idea, which both collaborates and fundraising something. Because 25 years of the Alliance, at looking around now with more than 50 members and more than 36 countries, I think we are in a good position to think about a nice idea.
Good, thank you. We look forward to your ideas on the board.
It's only on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Gates Foundation is a great idea, and maybe we can invite Bill Gates for our 25th anniversary. I don't know. And we can call patients from all over the world and, try to make them sensitive towards ALS. I'm sure he knows. But just looking at all of us being together, fighting for it, just like they have supported HIV/AIDS,
Yes,
just
good
like
idea.
me.
Thank you very much. Last one, I think we better wrap up down the front here.
We think the Alliance has a huge fundraising potential. it really called me the attention that when the Ice Bucket Challenge happened, we really didn't get everything that we could, taking into account that potential that we had. And I always wonder why, as a global alliance, we fail to give more follow-up for that marvelous, wonderful campaign in 2014 and try to continue that. It was a one and only and wonderful opportunity in that year. And I sometimes wonder if among the members here, who are those people that really have the power to make that kind of decisions within their organizations? In our case, I am the one, and he is the one who makes those decisions in terms of the budget, in terms of funding, and in terms of fundraising. And I usually don't find peers like presidents who make those decisions within the other organizations.
Thank you. Yeah.
Like decisions like funding decisions, investment decisions could be made among those that really are in charge of making those decisions, that are usually, in our case, the presidents.
Thank you.
My proposal is, to sum up, to have a meeting of those presidents, maybe out of the program for Boston next year, so we can call upon those specific persons within organizations that make those decisions, meaning the presidents of the institutions. So we can have a meeting for presidents, yeah, representing those organizations, so we can make that kind of decisions in terms of what money we can invest for projects that then can be, carried out by the CEOs representing the alliance. So we can add up much more funds to the alliance for research and quality of life for patients. Yeah.
Thank you, Dario. I think looking around the room, there are quite a few decision makers in the room. So hopefully we'll get a chance to get together outside of this formal meeting. I think it's time to wrap up, but I hope that's not the end of the conversations. I hope you all continue to talk amongst each other with your ideas and thoughts and feed them back to Rachel. And we can develop that paper that we'll distribute to everybody. We were going to have our little round table discussions too, but we obviously haven't got time for that. So it was great that you could all get involved in this, and we welcome your feedback on how to better structure these interactive sessions. I know they're difficult. The group's large. There's lots of different languages in the room as well, but we'll listen to what you have to say and adjust for next year if necessary. So thank you, everybody. And please, morning tea and a break, and we'll reconvene at 11 to hear the research update. Thank you.